Grateful Dead publicist Dennis McNally curated the Tournament of Champions final. And before it started, we listened to some tracks by Jerry and Robert Hunter from the early 1960s. So I thought I'd share those clips and the discussion with everyone before we get going with the actual game.
All my trials?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Without me playing guitar?
Oh, yes.
Yes, without me playing guitar.
I don't think we will.
Oh, shut up and sing.
Hush, little baby, don't you cry. You know your mind was born to die. Oh, my trials soon be over. I had a little book with pages 3, and every page spelled liberty. Oh, my trials soon be over.
So that's the oldest recording of Jerry Garcia that I know about, which isn't to say that it's the absolute. I keep saying people like Steve know way more than I do. But that is from Bob and Jerry, the only recording of Bob and Jerry that I know about. And it was recorded in Bridget Meyer's living room for her 16th birthday. So Jerry, in the fall of 60, drops out of high school. The bus ride was very long and he just couldn't handle. Supposedly, there might have been a stolen car, a borrowed car involved. Anyway, in that era, and you guys all look way too young to know this, but in that era, there was a very common, son, how would you like to join the army? Because either that or you go to the slams. So he joined the army. And he was stationed, Jerry was stationed at Fort, at the Presidio in San Francisco, which pretty much was the choicest duty assignment in the entire United States Army. The result of this was when a second lieutenant, that was the captain. When the captain has a complete fuck up in their unit, the idea isn't to torture them and, make them straighten out or whatever. The usual idea is get rid of them. And literally the captain called Private Garcia in and said, son, you're not adapting very well to the Army. How'd you like to leave? And he said, sir, I'd like that just fine. So he ends up in Palo Alto in January of 61. Many things happen, including a catastrophic car crash that he's literally blown out of his shoes. And a good buddy of his, a new close friend that he'll never get closer, died in the accident, a guy named Paul Spiegel. And that was in February. And in March, Mr. Robert Hunter shows up in Palo Alto. And they immediately bond. I'm immediately, along with a guy named Alan Trist, who would later run music publishing for the Grateful Dead. These people stuck together. A guy named Willie Legate, who would end up being the janitor at Front Street. They had a high school mascot, a young woman, lovely woman named Bridget Meyer, which is why they played her birthday party. And Alan Trist was from England and was on a gap year. And he had to go back to England in November of 61. And immediately after that, Hunter sat down and wrote a novel called The Silver Snarling Trumpet, which is a quote from Keith. And if you haven't gotten it, what kind of fucking deadheads are you? No, but you probably want to check it out. So I've been doing a bunch of PR for it because I wrote the introduction. And poor things, they didn't have any better option than to have me stand in for Robert. So I've been doing a bit of press about it, and you'll, hopefully you'll see it around. And that's that song. And there's one more if you want to play that.
I'm troubling mine. I'm blue, but I won't be blue always. You know the sun gonna shine on my back door someday. I'm going down.
And I'd only just now realized that I picked the two songs that Hunter dominated, which he usually didn't. But as it is, what's fascinating, really fascinating about these songs, and there's 6 of them, is so at 15, Jerry was taking painting lessons, and literally while they painted, the teacher played Big Bill Broonzy and other blues records. And he said, aha, I want a guitar. So when his mother got him an accordion for his 15th birthday, he cried and pissed and moaned and eventually got himself a guitar. It was an electric guitar. And he was in a garage band in Sebastopol, where he was then had moved. He was going down the bad way even then, and his mother wanted to get him out of the city and into, the country, which succeeded only in boring him to death. While in the army, he ran into a guy who started teaching him finger picking. So at the moment that you just heard, he'd been finger picking guitar for 6 months. If you get this CD, the whole package, and just listen to the next selection, which is from Midsummer. I should look this stuff up, but anyway, you'll know, or if you don't know, you'll find out fast. The next selection is some stuff he did at the Boar's Head, which was a little teeny sort of a folk club up the peninsula. And it's only 2 months later, and you're going to be shocked at how much better he is. This is because, to quote Robert Hunter, Jerry played guitar anywhere from 24 to 38 hours a day. He was not seen without a guitar. Thus, the story of Jerry Garcia.
Welcome to Guest of the Year. I'm the host. My name's Mike. This week's setlist curator is Dennis McNally. Dennis is an author, historian, and publicist, including for the Grateful Dead. His books include Desolate Angel, on Jack Kerouac and the Beat Generation, A Long Strange Trip on the Dead, and Highway 61 on music, race, and the evolution of cultural freedom. He also wrote the introduction for the Silver Snarling Trumpet, The Birth of the Grateful Dead, the lost manuscript of Robert Hunter, which is available now and linked in the show notes. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you for having me.
The first place winner of the Season 2 Tournament of Champions final will get a Jerry painting from the one and only Ellisa, aka It Started With a Crayon on Instagram. She's a wonderful artist, a longtime cheerleader of the podcast, all creative endeavors by me and her son Dylan, who draws the posters. So thank you so much, Ellisa. I will link a photo of the painting in the show notes so everyone can enjoy it. I've seen a lot of paintings of Jerry, and I've never seen one like this. It's so incredible. Thank you so much, Ellisa. And no one's going home empty-handed at the end of the Tournament of Champions. The second and third place finishers are getting prize packs from Shelburne Farms in Shelburne, Vermont. Shelburne Farms is a sustainability, education, and learning-focused organization that makes raw milk, cheddar cheese, and maple syrup on their farm campus outside of Burlington, Vermont. They ship their packages nationwide, and they make great gifts to yourself or friends and family. Learn more or order some sweet Vermont products by visiting shelburnefarms.org. That's linked in the show notes. Thanks so much, Tom, for putting that together. Here's how the game works. We'll play the first part of a Grateful Dead live track, and each contestant will use the messaging system to silently guess which year the performance is from. Contestants who are all on a video conference together can message in their guesses at any time during the clip or in the 10 seconds after it concludes. Whoever is closest to the correct years in aggregate over 5 songs wins the Tournament of Champions. We'll re-meet our Deadhead contestants in a moment, but first, without further ado, the Grateful Dead.
while she's blue, she is not to play. Horse for flying, wings spread bright, spring from night into the sun.
It just now occurred to me that there's a trick answer.
I knew I should have picked that year.
I knew it.
Okay, the guesses are in. It was Help on the Way at Cow Palace in Daly City on December 31st, 1976. All three of them got it. Dennis, your trick answer is that it was probably played in 77.
Now, the reason I picked this is it was my first Grateful Dead concert in San Francisco. I think it was probably after midnight. I'm guessing. I might now also add, by the way, that as a person who then, ended up working with them and going to every New Year's for umpteen years, most of which were not so great. There were a couple of special ones, largely because by the 31st, they'd played 3 or 4 shows. Everybody had a cold, and they'd been nagged for people about tickets. It was not our favorite time of the year.
I can understand that, even though they sounded really good there. So all these guys got it, including Steve, who's from Lincoln, Nebraska. Steve, why 76?
It was initially just the long intro, and then I thought, shit, is this one of the 75 ones? But then Keith was playing the actual piano and not the Rhodes, and just the lyrics, because my memory's fading a little bit. But I think one of the 75 ones, there was they just played like the tune and maybe didn't sing. I don't know. But then I thought for a split second, shit, is that 77? But then the drum sound went back to 76. It was real close to 77, but it's a great recording.
Gavin's from Las Vegas. How did you figure out 76?
The heavy bass in the opening, but at the end of it, I didn't think it was the 75 one with the no lyrics, but I thought it was that Golden Gate show. And I was like, oh, shit. But it wasn't.
Awesome. Pete's from Woodbury, Connecticut. Pete, why 76?
Echoing really what these guys have said, definitely the heavy bass. I, for a second there, thought, well, is this 75? The drum sounds got a little bit of a looseness to it that I think Steve was alluding to there. And that's kind of why I kind of went 76. That, and no one ever puts anything from 77 on this show anymore. But Dennis is a nubile in here. And so, there was a good chance he could have dropped that on us. So when he said, I got a trick one here, I was like, oh man, this is 75, isn't it? So anyway, worked out.
Yeah. Oh, good. I have no desire to necessarily mess with you.
Sam Kotori curated the tracks last week, Dennis.
You know Sam?
I do know now. He was talking a lot about you, but he chose the tracks last week and he dropped a 95 space on everyone.
Yeah, he was great.
He's a real deadhead, so he's a dick. He's my nephew. I mean, we refer to each other as nephew and uncle.
Top-notch nephew you have there. Shout out Sam. Good guy. Okay, we got 4 more songs.
You're all fired if you can't get.
Wow, no one's fired. That was Bertha. No, it was that was Dark Star at Veterans Auditorium in Santa Rosa, California on June 27th, 1969. Everyone got it.
That's not what I. It
I thought
sounded funny to me because it's way similar to the one I was singing. What I meant. Lousy
that's my bad.
communication. Was February 27th, which is to say the one that's on the record.
Live Dead.
Live Dead. For a number of reasons, but it's clearly 69, so everybody gets.
Sorry.
So that's the problem. No, I picked that only because a couple of things. One of my best experiences with the Grateful Dead, since Jerry died, was I got asked to do the liner notes for the Fillmore West 69, whatever, I forget what they called it, but it was the whole weekend, 4 nights, solid. It's my favorite era of Grateful Dead, and just in general, it was fascinating to listen to it all and to hear how badly they started that night, the 27th. And then by the second set, the Dark Star and the St. Stephen are what they chose, and they chose very wisely and well. Since the book, I've not spent as much time, listening to things as much as you do, I suspect. But that one, was a great thing to wallow in. So that was Thursday night. On Saturday night, they did a show that was equally as good. And it was perfect from note one. I mean, it was just a fantastic show. You hear the band's just screaming. They won't let them go away. They're demanding an encore. And Jerry's literally like sort of blown out. Just going, oh man, I don't know. Do we really got it? Please. And Phil's left the building. No, come on. And they finally come out and they perform the worst Hey Jude ever performed by any band. I mean, the drummers couldn't drum. Pig couldn't sit. It was just, I don't know, which is why I love that show almost beyond measure. It's so Grateful Dead. But anyway, so that's that. And great thing about that was what I didn't realize until, and I don't think he did it so very often, although you guys would probably know better. And that is the song before that is Mountains of the Moon, which he was playing an acoustic on. You hear, I don't know, 2 bars where he steps away, hands Ramrod the guitar, gets the electric, and starts Dark Star. But I was not aware of him. How many times did you ever see him switch guitars in a show? And when you hear the raw tape that I got to hear, it was like, oh, you son of a bitch. So anyway.
So Jerry as an interview subject comes up on Guest Theater all the time because he is such a great interview. But did you have to convince him to actually go to the interviews, or did he go willingly?
Jerry's attitude about doing interviews, well, with me, it was just, when do you want to talk? He was, delightful. With other stuff, first, I got choosy fairly fast because everybody wanted Jerry. And I was saying, well, no, you can't have Jerry. You can have Bobby if you want. And as the years went by, particularly in the last couple of years, he was, because of his diabetes, his mood swings, and he didn't take it out on other people, but you could see black clouds over his head, and you'd go, I'm not talking to that guy today. So there weren't so many interviews, obviously, at the end. The last one was the kind of the last 2 that I can think of, 3. Jeff Goldberg, who was a very big deal correspondent for ABC, wanted to talk to Jerry. We did that. A guy from the Palo Alto Historical Society wanted Jerry. Yes, got to acknowledge our roots. And then finally, the last one, which was hilarious, was I got a call from the AMC, the American Movie Channel, and they had a TV show called The Movie That Changed My Life. And I went, this he'll want to do. So I went to see him, and I'm pretty sure there are bits of it in Amir's, the Long Strange Trip video. Certainly the whole business about Frankenstein is taken from that interview. It was hilarious. He was in the dressing room at the Warfield, some Garcia band show. And I went in and I said, I think I have something for you. And I don't think I talked to him in 6 months or, about more than hi and, hello, but not work. And I said, "There's the show," and he immediately did the interview for me. He started, "Oh man," and he went into detail. He was talking about fabric on the back of the seat. He was 8. The fabric on the back of the seat in front of him. But he still remembered. He was describing it to me. It was great. So then, he eventually did the interview, but that was it. So yeah, before that, it would have been interesting to have him with the internet because, we could do short little interviews that everybody would love. But didn't happen. But he felt an obligation to talk to deadheads. There had to be some form of direct communication. It wasn't so direct because it was through the media. But there you go. He never said no to me, ever.
So is that because you two were pals and Jerry just always helped his friends?
I think he felt a little obligation to me since he'd gotten me into the mess of being their publicist. He felt obligated to help me out. I mean, Phil did not do interviews, period. Billy did not do interviews, period. Mickey only did interviews if it had something to do with drums. Bobby did them occasionally, but wasn't all that wild about it. So it came down to Jerry.
Okay, so using the example of Letterman, say, once it was established that you were going to send someone onto the show, did they ask for Bob and Jerry? Did you offer Bob and Jerry knowing that's what they'd want? How did that negotiation kind of transpire?
Yeah, that one, was they said Bob and Jerry. There was one that Jerry did with Grissman, because, and I convinced him in order to sell their album. It was that's why you do those things is to sell something. The great thing about Jerry Garcia was that he never, ever did an interview to sell anything, which is what 90% of all rock and roll interviews are, of course. He'd do it, because it was an interesting conversation to be had. There's a great moment where Saturday Night Live, I think the first one, but it doesn't matter. The producer is saying, Jerry, Jerry didn't want to be there. Okay. It was all just too commercial, I think. Although he loved Frank and Davis, but which is why they did it. And the producer is saying, Jerry, could you take 3 steps forward? Because as it is now, we're not going to get you in the shot. And Jerry says, I don't give a fuck. So, eventually, they figured it out. But he, that was not one of his favorite things, no. But as I say, mostly he did interviews as an act of noblesse oblige to the audience, to relate to the audience.
Thanks, Dennis. My apologies for fucking that up. I literally have one job, and I couldn't do it.
I was going, I don't think that's the one I picked, but it was really close. I'm telling you,
it was really close.
It's not too far off. There's some extra Bobby in there. I think that's he's going off on some. And by the way, let me make this comment, which is still one of the strangest aspects of Grateful Dead ever. October of '68, supposedly they're going to fire Bobby and Pigpen. Now, I don't know. They had a meeting. I've listened to the tape. That's what they're saying. But, all I know is if Bobby sucked so bad in October of '68 that they wanted to fire him, why the fuck was he so good in February of '69? Because you listen to anything on Live Dead, he is hot. So
because that was Bobby's middle finger to everybody, was getting really good really fast.
Well, I said to him, so what? Because he and I got into a great rave about his 21st birthday, which was '68. And he had a room, some kind of room at the Olympic Studio. And he said he hid in there and just worked. And obviously it worked.
Tell somebody that's pathologically anti-authoritarian that they can't do something, and then watch out.
Watch out. There.
Yeah.
There it is.
Poor guy was way younger than them too, and they didn't cut him any slack for that, I guess.
And that, it made, even though he loved Brent, it also occasionally made for friction with Brent, because now Brent was the new guy and Bobby was the one who got to pick on him. And these guys were not mature. They were all young men who had way too much, sex and drugs free offered them. and satisfaction in general of their lives. So it's not like they had any there was no compelling reason for them to like grow up. So they treated each other, like guys, a 19-year-old guy snapping towels at each other in the locker room just as often as not. I mean, not Jerry as much, although he could deliver the zinger when he wanted to, but particularly the other guys, they, and Brent, unfortunately, Brent had self-esteem issues long before he got to the Grateful Dead. So, I mean, you can't blame him on that, but still.
So they kind of hazed Brent.
Not as much, but they didn't make a major effort to support him. I mean, I remember seeing moments. I remember him, it was at Red Rocks, where Brent said to Phil, I happened to be standing nearby, my ears flapping, and Brent said to Phil, God, I'd really like to do, I think it was Give Me Some Lovin'. And he said to Phil, I'd really like to do that. And Phil said, with enthusiasm, he said, you start it, I'm on it. And they did. And so, it wasn't like, if anybody picked on him, it was Bobby, frankly. And not a big deal. It wasn't ritual hazing. But it could happen. Like I said, Bobby had 20 years of being the new guy or the baby guy to make up.
Well, all these guys got 69. Gavin, what were you hearing?
When I heard the opening, I thought it was 68. In my cram session these last couple days, I heard a couple of 68 the Dark Stars. I'm not that strong with Dark Star, especially early like that, but there was like a whooshing sound that you hear, and I was like, oh, I remember hearing that in that 68 Dark Star. But then that was my gut, and my gut was wrong, and I started hearing stuff that maybe I heard a 70 Dark Star maybe earlier this afternoon or yesterday, and so I was totally playing the game, and I was like, shit, I'll just put 69 and hope for the best, and because I knew I couldn't be that far off, but missing one or two on a night like this,
Fuck. Yeah.
you can't do. I had to play my cards right.
Yeah. Pete, where did your guess come from?
So yeah, I heard 68 at first. The percussion is everything in those early Dark Stars, and then the organ. Jerry's tone though pulled me to 69. His guitar tone is just a little softer, a little prettier, not so garagey, for lack of a better term. Sorry. And then at first I did think, boy, this is a lot like Live Dead. So I knew that that's 69, but as Dennis was saying, there's a lot of Bobby in this too, where you're like, damn, Bobby's going off on this. And I was definitely thinking that too. Like, wow, Bobby was really asserting himself like I've not quite heard him before in that time period, really. So nice pick. I like it. And like dumb luck that we landed on it. So good pick.
And Steve, did you waver at all?
No, but the thing that I always listen to those early Dark Stars is it Pig or is it TC on organs? That helps with who's on keys, right? And then, but then it was because I was like, is this the Fillmore West run? And then because Jerry's opening lick is the same one that there's on Live Dead. It's like note for note. So I'm like, this is. So I thought maybe it was just like a different mix of the Fillmore West shows. I couldn't remember which show the specific one that the Dark Star was taken from, but I knew it was 69 once Pete had the Garcia's guitar tone and it all just, and for a second, okay, so I did waver for a second because like,
now the truth comes out.
When Bobby came in, I'm like, shit, that could be 70.
Yes,
because he was usually higher in the mix in the 70s show, so I thought, God dang it! And then I heard then Garcia played that lick, and that was it, 69.
But you clearly heard TC.
I didn't. That was the thing, is I did not clearly hear TC. I heard an organ, but what I didn't hear was the which was what Pig played on Dark Star.
All right, let's hear Dennis's third pick.
knew I had to fuck with you at least once.
Oh man, they're right on your tail, Dennis. So the guesses are in. It was Visions of Johanna at Delta Center in Salt Lake City, Utah on February 21st, 1995. Pete and Steve got it. Gavin guessed 94. That was some great playing in 95, Dennis. Tell us about that track.
For my money, it was the only good playing of the year. I swear to God. It was grim. And he was, so erratic. I think it's possibly Dylan's greatest song. And it was a slightly odd gig. I don't know how it worked out, but it was very last second. Ordinarily, when the Grateful Dead would play in Salt Lake City, say, we would stay at this really, really cushy resort called the Stein Eriksen Ski Lodge up in Park City. They had a guy come and build a fire for you if you wanted a fire in your fireplace. And it was midsummer, and we had him come down and do it because you only live once. However, this was last second, so we stayed in like some kind of Marriott or something downtown. Ordinary. Local radio guy decides that he's going to be very clever and he's going to bribe the doorman or the guy at the desk and knock on Jerry's door at 8 o'clock in the morning, stick a mic in his face and say, welcome to Salt Lake City. Now, this is a flawed plan on any number of levels. One of which is the guy didn't Jerry go to the door and open it at 8 o'clock in the morning. Not happening. The question will always be, did the guy at the desk take the money and deliberately fuck with him or accidentally fuck with him? But he sent him to Billy Grillo's room. Billy Grillo was Kreutzmann's drum tech. He's, I don't know, 5'9", not a huge guy, 5'9", but ripped muscles, shaved head with tattoos, biker, and not always violent, but, And so he opens the door, pissed, and the guy says, "Are you Jerry Garcia?" Realizing that, at this point, Jerry Garcia looks like two people. He looks like Jerry Garcia or Santa Claus. And Billy's response is, "Do I fucking look like Jerry Garcia?" Pow. And popped him. It cost us $3,000 to settle the lawsuit. The guy got fired, though. Now, I tell the story only because that's what I spent the weekend doing, is explaining that, well, yes, Billy might have some anger management issues, but the guy wanted a reaction. He got it. And, what's the big problem here? But every media in friggin' Salt Lake, the whole valley, had to get a commentary on this non-incident. So I'm like slightly distracted in all this. And they played, okay, but it was 90s. And then they did this. And of course, as I say, it's I think one of the masterpiece songs of all time. I mean, it's the best song on Blonde on Blonde. I don't have to say much more than that, or best. That's silly, but you know what I'm saying. And there was another one, I think, in Philly. Anyway, years later, fortunately, now that everything in the world is on YouTube, I got to hear the because I believe me, I was not collecting tapes for 95 shows if I could help it. I saw it on YouTube and I was just like, where does this stuff come from? Where he's like, now he did have a teleprompter. So, I mean, that helped with the lyrics because it's a short novel. But other than that, and I don't think he really stared. If you look at the YouTube, it's not like he's glomming on the teleprompter all the time. He had it there as his comfort thing. But anyway, it's such a great song, and I think that I wanted to get something in, a Dylan song in, because the relationship between him and Dylan was a real thing for both of them. And I made Dylan shake my hand when he came to the funeral because he does not shake hands, and his handshake was classic wet fish.
So when they went on tour with Dylan, did your publicist responsibilities ramp up? Because I imagine the press had tons of questions, of course.
Yes and no. Dylan wouldn't allow photographers. Working with his people, don't get me started. It was intense. God, the DC show almost killed me because There was no day in RFK that wasn't 100 degrees and 100% humidity. It was just the worst. But I will share with you one of the best lines ever about the Grateful Dead, which was that one of the days at RFK, we were leaving to go back to the hotel, and I got to the top of the stairs just at the same time as Ramrod. Ramrod was a wonderful soul and a very wise person, and truly an ethical touchstone for the whole band. But as we got to the top of the stairs, he said, "Well, at least it's not a real job," which was true. I mean, you know, work, but it wasn't a real job.
Thank you. Pete and Steve both got 95 exactly. Gavin was just 1 year off at 94. Pete, why 95?
That is absolutely one of my all-time favorite songs, bar none, from any band, anytime. Well, just that Dylan song is tops for me. So I'm familiar with the fact that the Dead played it a number of times in 95. And I think they played it like twice in 86 or something like that. So that immediately drew me to 95, and I'm familiar, and I've listened to it multiple times. And then just the, you know, the instrumentation and everything just tells you it's that period generally. But big Dylan fan, and Visions is just such a wonderful song. So nice choice. I love it.
Lovely, yeah. Steve, did you pick out that specific show as well?
I did not pick out that specific show. My go-to 95 Visions of Joanna is the 318 one from the Spectrum, because it was on the Phil's Fallout from the Phil's own CD thing. That's where I knew that from. And there's a good video of it on YouTube too that's just absolutely heart-wrenching to watch Jerry play and sing that at that time period. That's the thing that always and this is something, Dennis, you talk about us knowing more. I'm sure you have a more insight on this than I do, but it seemed like when whatever spirit would come up from the depths of where he was at that time period, just forget about it. He was like Jerry Garcia in full effect, and his hands and everything were failing him. That's obvious. That was the diabetes. He couldn't feel shit. Like, that's hard to play the guitar like he did and not be able to feel your fingers. It's kind of tough. But there were some moments in 90, and I agree with Dennis's assessment. Like, it's my last two shows were at the Palace, just outside of Detroit, June 27, 28, 95, and I can't listen to them. I can't listen to them. It hurts. But there are moments in 95 that drop my socks every single time. The Stella Blue from St. Louis, that disastrous couple shows there. The Stella Blue, I think it's like 7/2/95. Forget about it. It's amazing. And also, I just love, and this may be sacrilegious, but the overall sound of the band in the fall of 94 and 95 is my favorite. I love the way the drums sound. I love the way Phil's bass sounds. I love Bobby's guitar sound. Vinny may not have been the guy, but like even that, like they've finally gotten him kind of integrated, and there's just something about, like, they sound like a goddamn rock band, which I kind of enjoy.
Cutler had less ego on the line on any number of levels, and yes, except for the fact that people were yelling at him to turn it up, but the mix, yeah.
It's just much, and I hate to use this word, but it's more accessible.
Yeah.
Like the extreme stereo separation, the extreme dynamics. Like, I understand it and I appreciate it, but just from coming in and getting your socks rocked, I just love the way they sounded. The couple of times I saw him, 94, 95, Phil's bass, like every pick, like it was like lightning striking me every single, I mean, it was just amazing. And so, like, when this Palace shows, when I was there, I mean, I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong, but I was also, not super focused on that at the time, is how I'll put it. What I was focusing on was the good time and how it sounded. So going back and listening to it, it's great. But anyway, 95. And also that, I think that those Delta arena shows or whatever it's called. I think those were the first teleprompter shows, because I remember seeing something in like Dupree's or one of those magazines talking about that. Like, what's like teleprompters?
Dennis, was what the Deadheads might think of the teleprompters a consideration before implementing them?
I don't know specifically about the teleprompters, except it was like, it's logical. Yeah, I mean, well, of course, the standard joke is that, you tell Bob Weir, why is it that you can sing a short novel by Bob Dylan flawlessly, which he could, you can't fucking remember the lyrics to Sugar Magnolia, or was it Truckin'?
Truckin',
Truckin'.
And
Yeah.
in particular, and he said that's because Hunter deliberately made it a tongue twister just to fuck with me. Maybe true. There's a reason that Hunter fired him and moved in, said to Barlow, "You right, go, please take him." I just, it just seemed like it was such a logical thing. Was to, it's a screen. It's not a giant, obviously they didn't have iPads in the 90s, but now that's what they use, and it's so small. But anyway, I wasn't in the room when that came up.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's widely accepted now. Gavin, 94, one whole year off.
I feel like I just lost.
No, we're bound to screw up here, Gavin.
It
Don't
was
worry.
a rookie mistake. I didn't know they didn't play that song in '94, and I heard the Bobby's guitar. I heard, and I had just listened to a '94 or something or another right before I got home, and I went to the shows in LA in December of '94. So putting those two together, I didn't think that what I just heard would have happened after the LA shows that I went to, because they didn't sound that good. I mean, I got to see that Branford Marsalis show, so that was kind of cool. But the only thing that I really remember, because I don't listen to 95 shows ever, is from the Delta Center shows. They busted out Salt Lake City, and that was
Oh yeah.
and so that was
Yeah.
like the one thing I remember, and haven't really chosen to go back to listen to
And
it.
there is no reason to go back to listen to it.
Right. And so
Yes.
I mean, they took 20 minutes to rehearse it, and it should have taken an hour. That's just like.
But regardless, though, I didn't think that was, like Steve said, there were some moments in '95 that were knock your socks off. I didn't think anything at the Delta Center was one of them, but I was wrong.
Dennis, you just said, yeah, they took 20 minutes to rehearse it, and it seems like you were there for rehearsals and they should have taken an hour. How often would you see something that you felt was a train wreck waiting to happen and actually try to prevent the train wreck? Or do you just be like, there's nothing I can do ever, I'm just going to watch?
Oh, no. I would never try and prevent a train wreck.
Okay.
I learned 2 lessons, one of them on the first day, which was never tell them how great a song was or a show was when they're just coming off the stage. The odds are good that they'll look at you and go, "Did you hear what Mickey was playing?" Or, "I sucked. What, are you kidding me?" And just requests. And no, it was a very bad idea. The one that I saw, the greatest train wreck I ever saw, I think, one of them anyway, which I knew was going to be a train wreck, was 83. They did the St. Stephen at the Garden. And I had just flown in that day and got there just in time for sound check. And Jill, the new girl, not yet wife, had been teasing them on the plane. "Come on, I want to hear St. Stephen." And so, yeah, all right. So they rehearsed it, and they rehearsed it a solid hour. And my memory, and again, I haven't gone back and listened to it, but my memory is it was a really, really good version. So a week later, whatever it was, they do it in Hartford. It's a Mets. Not so good. And they get home, and they're playing shows which end on Halloween at home. And when I say home, I mean we were playing in the Marindettes, which is a mile from the office. We were sticking a thumb in Bill Graham's eye just to show him we could do a show without him. The local karate club was our security, and it went fine. They all went well, but that was the whole point of those shows. And I was talking about it with Eileen, and Kreutzmann came up the stairs behind me and overheard and basically said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, every deadhead in the Bay Area complains that you guys you get the practice on the road, and you do much more interesting things for East Coast deadheads than for us. And they got to St. Stephen, and we want to St. Stephen." He went, "All right, he said, I don't get to pick, but I'll mention it." And at some point, Rock got wind of all this, and he went to Jerry and he said, "Come on, you really, really need to do this." And again, for those of you who haven't listened to it lately, it sucked. It was a train wreck waiting to happen. It had been at least 2 weeks, 3 weeks since they'd played it. And, that was one of those be careful what you wish for.
Thank you, Dennis. Gavin has 1, these two have 0. Dennis has a 4th song. All right. The guests are in. It was China Cat at Province Civic Center in Province, Rhode Island on June 26th, 1974. Gavin and Steve both got it. Peak at 73. Dennis, excellent pick. Tell us about that China Cat.
I never heard a China Cat where they jammed for, a couple of minutes before they started. This is the opening song of the show. If it had gone 5 seconds more, you would have heard him start, to sing the song from the beginning. There are other times when they might be jamming off of other stuff, but to open the show with a jam, brief, J-Rad it's not, but still, is just, it fascinated me when I don't know why. Hunter wrote the lyrics to that in like 68 before he'd even he had done, it might have even been earlier 68, question I didn't ask, but he had done, I'm pretty sure he'd already done at least the first couple, the 2 verses of Dark Star, but he wasn't the lyricist yet in that, that absolute sense. But Jerry had this weird little, riff, and Hunter said, "How about this? That'll work." So anyway, it's one of their most, in some ways, technically most interesting songs, and a truly great one. And as I say, it's a really unusual version for them to play.
Thank you. Steve, talk to us.
I knew it was 6/26/74 almost immediately. Or I just, yeah. Just because I've listened, because it was 6/28/74. David Gans had played on the Dead Hour many, many years ago, and I love that. And then this was released as a Dick's Picks at some point with 6/26 attached to it. And so and that opening jam sequence is very unique. I've just listened to it a bazillion times, and I love it. And Phil's bass sounds amazing. And
having the wall behind you kind of helps.
Yeah, I mean, that just when he drops those bombs at the transition between the second and third, forget about it. Like, that's just my favorite thing ever.
And Gavin, 74 too. Nice pull. What gave it away?
I'm down by 1. It feels like I'm down by 10.
Exactly. I know.
I knew it was 74. The sound quality, the wall of sound, and the speed of the song. Hearing Keith's piano, I mean, it all. I knew it was 74. Probably the summer, pretty quick, and tagging on to what Steve said. So that's where I ended up.
Nice. Pete, 73.
Just brain fart. So yeah, that, and I know that 62674, and I just, for some reason, got 73 in my head right away and stopped listening almost and just went with it based on like Billy's drums almost. So like Gavin said, I, feel like I'm down by like 2 touchdowns with, less than 2 minutes to go.
Well, yeah, you're only 1 point off of Steve's pace. Before we go to the 5th song of 5, Dennis, you were kind of got into the Dead, but before you got into the Dead verse, how did you get into the band itself?
Try and keep this short. I got to graduate school in the fall of 71, and the only guy I knew who smoked pot was this wonderful, weird mathematician, genius mathematician, actually, who was a Deadhead. I might add that we listened to records. This was before tapes. So, we get high. And so early in 72, I was mulling over a possible dissertation topic, and he gave me a big shove by saying, "Well, maybe I'll do something about the Beats." And he said, "You should do Kerouac. His papers are at Columbia, and you can stay with my friends in the Bronx." I might add, the guys in the Bronx are still some of my closest friends, so 50 years later. And that worked out. Well, obviously, after you start studying Kerouac, and then you find out that Cowboy Neil at the Wheel is Dean Moriarty and On the Road, your mind, if you're me, your mind says, aha, I'll do. So I went to my first show, 10/2/72, very good show, half sold out, by the way, in an 8,000 seat venue. Remember, there was a time when it wasn't crazy. So I said, okay, I'll write 2 books, Kerouac and then the Grateful Dead. Very long, very complicated story short. The book came out in 79. I sent a copy to Jerry and to Hunter through the Post Office Box 1065, San Rafael fan club. And again, very long story short, when they were doing auditions of Deadheads for possible use in the Halloween Radio City Music Hall show, I met Jerry. And I waited maybe a minute, maybe 2, before I said, by the way, I wrote a book about Kerouac that I sent you. Did you ever get it? Well, what I didn't know, I kind of sensed it, but of course I didn't know it, was that On the Road was Jerry's Bible. He got it in the same guy that turned him on a guitar in that painting class, was a beat painter in San Francisco, well-known, famous guy, Ollie Hedrick. And he, I think I did a good book of mine on Kerouac, but the truth is that Jerry was really, really excited because it really was important to him as a young man and as for the rest of his life. So he got up and shook my hand and said, that's great and blah, blah, blah. And about 2 months later, I got a phone call from Alan Christ and Rock Scully to meet again at the Warfield. And it was during the Dylan run of 80. And they said, Jerry says, why don't you do us? Which is to say, why don't you write a book about the Grateful Dead? Now, I had known from day one that if I ever walked up to Jerry Garcia and said, I'd like to write a book about you, he'd tell me to take a number. It had to be his idea. And for once in my friggin' life, I didn't follow it up. I just went, oh, great. Hey, yeah. And then I was working on it for 3 years, and Rock went away for a rest. And at that time, the band had a monthly company meeting, all-employee meeting. And the receptionist raised her, and anybody could say anything at the end of the meeting, if it was a complaint, a suggestion, or whatever. And this receptionist lady said, "What are we going to do about press?" Rock was supposed to be the publicist, but of course, anyway, she said, nobody's returning their calls. And then they call back and they annoy me, and what do we do? And Jerry said, get McNally to do it. He knows that shit. And because you guys will like this, I'll tell you this story. So I went up to his house, and he said, "First, you have to understand, we don't suck up to the press." And I went, "Okay, don't suck up." I swear to God, I might have written it down. And then he said, "That's about it. Here, smoke this." That was my job training, and that was it.
So did Jerry not like sucking up to the press because he saw them as like an authority figure?
Well, not so much authority as just showbiz, And what I learned is that when you're a publicist, you have two clients. You have those lovely people that sign your checks, and you have a broad span of media that you, if you're going to be successful, and when you start at the top with the Grateful Dead, by definition, you're successful because everybody takes your calls. You build relationships so that when there's something, some side project that you want covered, you get a chance that, you don't go saying, "I'll never talk to you again if you don't do this." But, you have this relationship. And for instance, I'll give you the one for instance. The only time I ever ignored him, after they hired Vince, he came to me. I came to him as they were leaving the studio. And I said, "When do you want to announce about Vince?" And he said, "We're not going to announce. Well, when we do the next show, which was Cleveland, they'll see who's in the chair." Now, my job was not just to, be a secretary, but also to apply intelligent judgment. And the fact is that it wasn't that he even gave a shit. He was distraught about Brent, and he hated auditioning other musicians. That was the judging, which was loathed. So he didn't want to talk about it, but I knew he was wrong. So what I did, and there's no way that after 30 years of covering or 25 years of covering the Grateful Dead, that the San Francisco Chronicle is going to get scooped by the Cleveland Plain Dealer. This is just not in the band's interest. So what I did was I called up Joel Selvin of the Chronicle, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to give you a scoop, but it's off the record." And he said, "Well, what can I do if it's off the record?" I said, "Trust me, I'll teach you how to do this newspaper business." He'd been doing it for 30 years, and I said, "I'll teach you. Don't worry about it." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "Fine. The new Grateful Dead keyboardist is Vince Wellnick." And he went, "Really?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "Now call Mickey Hart and ask him who the new keyboard player is." And Mickey and Joel were good buddies because, Mickey had all these projects that, he loved getting publicity about. So he did. It worked out. It ran. I'm reasonably sure that Jerry I don't think Jerry ever thought, "Oh, McNally, he didn't care." He didn't care. Literally. It was just a matter of he didn't want to be bothered.
So, of course, Jerry didn't think of himself as in charge of the Grateful Dead, but it seems like in that moment, you had to decide what to do with this news, and you went right to Jerry for direction.
Yeah, mostly because, again, whether he liked it or not, he was most often the spokesperson. And also, he was standing closest. I could have easily gone to Phil. I missed 2 shows in 15 years of being on the payroll, which happened to be Cal Expo shows right next to each other because my daughter graduated college. When I had to go tell a band member I want permission to miss work, I went to Phil because he'd be, if I hadn't gone to him, Jerry would have just said sure. But anyway.
So you went to Phil to show that you took the request seriously?
Because I had to go to a band member and get excused from work. I mean, it was just, that's just the normal. Ramrod was right. It wasn't a job, but it was a job. And, at least I had to alert somebody in authority. I mean, I told Cameron, the tour manager, but,
Thank you, Dennis. That's an
You're very welcome.
insane story.
Yeah.
Steve is up by 1 on both these guys. Let's hear Dennis's 5th and possibly final pick. That was Dark Star at High Life Fronton in Miami, Florida on June 23rd, 1974. Steve nailed it. He's the repeat tournament champion,
Well
guest of
done,
the year
Steve.
champ.
Good job,
Gavin gets
Steve.
75, Pete gets
Well
72.
done, Steve.
Steve, you're a legend. The floor is yours.
That's right.
Well, it's there's some luck involved, but thanks, guys. It's this is my favorite game ever. Like, I'm not even kidding. I mean that
No.
so seriously. If you would have told me 30 years ago that I'd be playing in a Grateful Goddamn Dead game show, in the year 2024, I would not have believed you. The Grateful Dead is just this lotus flower that just keeps opening up and keeps getting weirder and more wonderful, and it's fantastic. And my hats off to you for having this idea and making it happen. And it's great. And I've got through this, I've gotten to hang out with David Gans, Bob Minkin, and now Dennis McNally. And these are all people whose books I've read and pictures I've seen for decades. Right. And so this is it's a dream come true. So Dennis, thank you so much for hopping on and doing this, because it's an honor. It's like, are you kidding me? If you would have told 18-year-old Steve that's reading, seeing all these pictures and going through all the books and absorbing everything dead that I could, that someday I'd get to talk with these people, forget about it, man. It's amazing. It's gratifying to know that I'm not the only totally insane person out there about this shit. So
people way crazier than you, trust me. They may not be as good, but I just wanted to say, thank Mike for I was the publicist for Skull and Roses, and he comes marching up to me. I guess you'd gotten in and you had your tape gear, but you were like nervous and you didn't know what, and I was like, what do you really want to do? And he said, well, we want to interview people and do Name That Year. I said, well, that's kind of interesting. Did you have video with you that because the video was always
no.
It was reasonable. So I said, okay, go over there. Here's some passes so they won't yell at you. Go over there, have fun. And we've, stayed in touch. So
I did not have video to show you a proof of concept, Dennis. I described it very ineloquently and you took a chance on me. So I'm forever grateful.
It made sense. Particularly because I knew I couldn't do it. I'm like, what you guys are doing? No, I would never, I mean, I have a grasp, but
all this is just the fruits of my misspent youth. That's what it is, man.
I understand completely.
Congratulations again to Steve. Thank you so much, Dennis McNally, for joining the show. Big ups to Pete and Gavin as well, of course. Thank you to Shelburne Farms for providing the second and third place prize packs. And of course, it started with a crayon, Ellisa, for doing the painting for Steve of Jerry. Again, all those links will be in the show notes for Shelburne Farms, for the painting, and of course for the Silver Snarling Trumpet, which is available everywhere now. Dennis McNally wrote the intro, so check that out. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Dylan for drawing the poster and James and Jack for helping out behind the scenes. If you want to help the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you would give a 5-star rating, write a review in the Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you listen. That concludes season 2. I want to thank you so much for listening. And thank you to all of our contestants this year, all of our curators, all of our prize pack providers, James and Jack and Dylan. Thanks to the amazing tapers whose recordings made this show possible. Congratulations to Steve for winning the tournament champions again. And to our other contestants, thanks for playing. And remember, I'll stress this again and always, that it is all one song anyway.
And I bid you good night, good night, good night. And I bid you good night, good night, good night.
We started the show with a clip from 1961, and I thought we'd end it with a clip from 1995. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Always a hoot.
Just like the night, great drinks when you're trying to be so quiet. City is stranded, oh, we're all doing our best to deny. And Louise holds a handful of rain, tempting you to deny. I slip from the opposite loft. Country music station plays soft. There's nothing, really nothing to turn off. And her lover so entwined. These visions of Johanna conquer my mind. Empty lot where the ladies play, blind man's bluff with the keychain. The all-night girls, it's out on the D train. We can hear the night watchman take his flashlight and ask himself if it's him or them that's insane. She's alright, she's just here. She's delicate and seems like the moon. She makes it all too concise and too clear that Johanna's not here. little more lost. He takes himself so seriously. He brags of his misery. He likes to live dangerously. When bringing her name up, he speaks of a farewell kiss to me. He sure got a lot of gold to be so useless at home, muttering small talk in the hall while I'm in the home. I cannot explain, it's so hard to get on. These visions of Joanna kept me up past the dawn. Inside the museums, infinity goes up on trial. Voices echo, this is what salvation must be like after a while. But Mona Lisa must have had those highway blues. You can tell by the way she smiles. Primitive wallflower freeze, the jelly fate with all sleeves. Let one with the mustache say, geez, I can't find my knees. Rules and binoculars, and from the view. Visions of joy, they get all seems cruel. The peddler now speaks to the countess who's pretending to care for. Ain't me someone that's not a parasite, and I'll go out and say a prayer for him. Like Louise always says, you can't look at much. Can you manage to see yourself prepared for him? Madonna, she still has not shown. You see this empty cage now closed. cape of the stage once echoed. The fiddler now steps to the road. He writes, everything's been returned, which is low. On the back of the fish truck that loads, while my conscience explodes. Scaling her keys in the rain. These visions of Johanna are now all that remains. These visions of Johanna are now all that remains.